From the Channel Seed Studios. Welcome to The Hook. A look behind the lines with Mike Palm and Ken Miller. Powered by Circa Sports Iowa. Sports betting the way it should be. This is Iowa Everywhere.
Channel Seed. Seedsmanship at work.
All right, and hello again, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of The Hook. It is a Friday as we head into a busy weekend. A lot of games, a lot of sports. We'll do some little baseball coming up. Obviously, a ton of football with both Iowa and Iowa State. About to take the field tomorrow, 11 o'clock for Iowa State and 3 o'clock, for Iowa and Wisconsin. My name's Ken Miller, who along with Trent Condon, man the 11 to 1 shift at Des Moines Sports Station 106.3 KXNO. My partner is the Vice President of Operations at Circa Sports. He's an Iowa native. He's Mike Palm. Hello, Mike Palm. How are you? Good to see you.
Hello, Ken Miller. How's the weather there on a late Friday autumn afternoon?
Is like you remember some of those windy days, right? Yep. Windy autumn days going to be difficult for the high school football games tonight as far as passing the football or trying to punt the football. And I guess that's the case throughout the Midwest. Which leads me to a decent question when it comes to betting on sports, especially totals, I'm guessing. Yeah. How big of a factor when you're getting set to make your play? How much time should you spend at least, researching what the weather forecast is going to be?
Yeah, I think you have to. And that's why it's hard for us on Sunday morning to put out totals when we don't know what the weather is going to be on, Thursday night, Friday, Saturday night. It's a little tough. We generally thought there'd be a lot of wind in the Midwest this weekend. Yeah. Games, from Iowa to Ohio probably affected Michigan. I played the under in the Iowa State game there at Cincinnati. Mm-hmm. Wind could be a factor there. I like both defenses as well. But rain is not that much of a factor on totals, unless the field condition gets so bad from the rain. Wind is much more important because it affects the passing game.
Right. I remember Elway, when I was such a John Elway fan, could not throw the ball in the rain. For whatever reason, if you got Denver in a game that was going to rain and he was their starting quarterback, they had no shot unless they could run the football. Anyway, so that's certainly interesting. Well, before we get into the sports, Illinois is now, a week ago since you guys cut the ribbon. What have you seen in the first week in Illinois? Obviously, some different restrictions over there. You can bet these college teams, but have to do so in person, correct?
Yeah, only over the counter. So they said, if they made these Iowa football and Iowa State football players come to the counter, they wouldn't have been betting. That's what they said. That's what they told me when I asked what's the reason of the rule.
That's true?
Yes. They said, look at what happened next door. So if they have to come to the counter, they're not going to show their face at the counter. They're not going to do it. But, it's the appearance that counts. But anyhow, so it used to be you couldn't bet at all. And then they modified it to you can bet, but only over the counter.
Interesting.
So it's interesting. It's funny. The other day, Derek was just amazed. He goes, these people love betting this total number of outs recorded by pitchers. I said, they love to do it everywhere but Nevada because nobody offers it in Nevada until the playoffs.
Mm-hmm. Right.
He said, all these people are about, I love it too. I wish I had an option every day, but we only get it come playoff time. So I think it's a tremendous way to bet baseball.
Trent, who loves to bet, as you know, on anything, two flies crawling up a wall, give me the one on the left. He loves that. And he's just kind of found his way to betting on that. So what's the thought process behind it?
Well, you're isolating, betting first five, you're isolating two starting pitchers, right? Mm-hmm. You bet a guy's individual outs, you're isolating him. You're really isolating him and the manager. And, I think it's fun. I think it's better than trying to bet, Strider over 8.5 strikeouts or something like that, or under 3.5 with Suarez, or, I'd rather go, can Suarez get more than 12.5 outs or whatever the number was, or Strider's 18 or what,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's more of a fun way to do it. And in a more relaxing sweat.
Yeah, that's true. Trent's a fan of the Twins, and he knew because he'd read articles leading up to Game 4 that it was going to be a bullpen game, and Joe Ryan was only going to pitch 2 or 3 innings. And he found it somewhere, was it 14 or 15 outs? Yeah. He couldn't find enough money to bet on that.
Well, that number was off market too, Kenny. I mean,
Sure.
I saw 9.5s, 10.5s, 11.5s too. So that
Oh,
number
did
was
you?
pretty far off mark. I saw Bryce Elder was 9.5 the other day, but it gives you an indication of what the thought is. I guess Elder really didn't. It was supposed to be Morton, but Morton wasn't ready to go. So
Right.
maybe that factored into it. But I love it. Now the other thing in Illinois, and this has to do with the player that plays there, is boy do they love betting this over shots on goal for Bedard, and we haven't been able to
Free
catch
money.
up with the number. I mean, we're getting killed with it. I mean, and
Yeah.
they're not betting 100, they're betting 1,500, 2,000,
Hmm.
and you had it at the plus price the second game because 2.5 over minus 150 the opening game. Then we went to 3.5, but over was plus 130. I mean, he had 6, he had 5 the opening. Now I said we got to move it again. Probably got to move it to 4.5. He gets all the offensive zone time with the puck, so
he's on the power play.
yeah,
And if
he
the puck is
plays
on his stick.
Yeah, I mean,
He's
I
got
get
such a quick
you're
release.
hesitant because he's a rookie. Is he going to get that much time? Is he? Yeah, he is. He
Yes,
is.
he is. He's on a bad team, and he's the best
Yeah.
player on a bad team by a mile. And he's
Yeah.
18 years old. He's baby faced. He'll be
Yeah.
hockey night in Canada tomorrow night. By the way, did you see how many people tuned into ESPN to watch his debut? I was floored.
How about their schedule? They back to back now. What were they doing with the Blackhawks schedule?
Yeah,
Did you watch the pregame ceremony in Boston for their second game?
I did not.
Oh my God! What
Was it good?
They have it. Oh, they had everybody in their ring of honor. Everybody that was for. I mean,
I saw Esposito and Orr on the ice.
that was the last two, but I mean, they went through. I mean, decades and decades of guy and recent player. I mean, it was amazing. It was up like a 25-minute introduction of all those guys, and then they concluded with Esposito and Orr. But it was a very powerful ceremony.
Boy, they had some dudes in the original 6 team and those teams in the 70s with Derek Sanderson and Orr and Busick and Westfall and Cheevers. And, anyways, let's get to the here and now. Well, since we started you mentioned Strider a minute ago. Were you shocked that the Phillies were able to beat the Braves, or did you – I know you've got some Phillies tickets, and you've been saying this for a while. There's just teams that are built for the playoffs.
They are. They get the advantage. That's the best home crowd in the playoffs in baseball by a mile. Okay, by a mile. They're so good there in Philadelphia, and they match up well with the Braves because they kind of are the same team as the Braves. And with the Braves having all the injuries and the starting pitching, I thought the advantage Philadelphia. I didn't think anybody could beat the Braves but the Phillies.
Right.
I told you all year the Dodgers can't beat anyone. They have no starting pitching.
No,
they got swept right out of it. Not surprising. Kershaw, who's never been a playoff pitcher, and then you had to pick a rookie and Lance Lynn. I mean, that's all you had. Who were they going to go to in Game 4? Ludicrous. So, look, they did a good job, though. They really should have won every game. They had a 4-0 lead, and the other, I think Thompson let Wheeler in there a bit long, but I don't want to criticize him because at least he's letting guys pitch.
Right.
I mean, you got Baldelli up there trying to throw 9-10 pitchers a game and win.
Yeah.
And I like what Dusty said that in that game with Joe Ryan. It was Urquidy in Game 4.
It was
and they asked Dusty before the game, what's Urquidy's pitch count? He said, pitch count. He has a performance count. It's not a pitch count. How's he pitching?
That's a good one.
Yeah.
No, that's good. Who wins the American League Championship Series? It's such a coin flip.
I think it's a coin flip. Yeah. I really do.
No lean?
I worry about if Framber Valdez is going to start 2 games for Houston, they're at a disadvantage.
I agree.
Because the guy's lost it. He won't throw his fastball for a strike. It's interesting because I think Bochy, who, by the way, is like 43-15 in the playoffs since he left San Diego to go to San Francisco. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
I think he's a choice in Game 1. You can stay with the rotation with Montgomery, who until Game 2 against Baltimore hadn't given up more than 1 run in 12 starts. On 6 days rest, or you can come back with a Voldy who's locked in right now on 4 days rest in Game 1. Save Montgomery for Game 2 to match up with Framber. I think it's an interesting choice. He might just stick with the rotation he's been going with Montgomery 1, ahead of Evoldi. But I would, they made 7 straight championship series. You don't get there by accident, and the big guys in their lineup are going to perform, right? I mean, Altuve, Bregman, Alvarez. Tucker's a heck of a hitter.
He is.
They have a real tough lineup at the top. So 3 or 4 times you got to get through them. Now I think the back of their lineups, is weaker. I've said that all year. There's too many automatic outs, but I lean Texas. but I think the price is about right. We opened at 125. We saw other places go to 140. I think it's pretty much a pick 'em with the home field, the difference, right?
Yeah. How about the National League?
Oh, I think the Philadelphia is the clear choice there. They did the job to win Game 4, not have to go back to Atlanta, and then you set up Wheeler, Nola, Suarez in that rotation for the champion. And look, I mean,
that bullpen too.
The bullpen is unbelievable. I mean, you can just keep bringing guys that throw 98. I mean, you start in the 5th inning with Sir Anthony, and then Alvarez is your best pitcher. He used him in the 6th last night, right in the leverage spots. Kimbrel gives me a little pause, but look, they're deep with the bullpen. That's not to say, I mean, Arizona lines up 1-2 as well. Merrill Kelly's a real underrated pitcher.
He really is.
Yeah. But Pafad pitched well against the Dodgers in Game 3, but he's tough to throw out there, and they really don't have a number 4 guy. I mean, who are you going to throw? Zach Davies? I don't know who you're going to throw in a Game 4. It'd be a bullpen day probably. I think it's a huge advantage, Philadelphia.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's going to be Philadelphia and Philadelphia, Texas. Is there anyone that Circuit doesn't need, Mike?
Houston. Houston is the team we lose to. We lose the American League too, and we lose the World Series. Of all the teams, though, they were the only one. And they're still there. But of all the teams, we're talking about 12 playoff teams. They were the only World Series liability for us.
What do you make of the fact that everybody that, with the exception of Houston, teams that had the bye were such easy outs? Is there something to that? Did handicappers, were they aware of that going into the series?
No. And Derek had the opposite opinion. He thought the teams with the byes, with the rested pitchers, had a big advantage. It didn't turn out. I mean, they didn't turn out to be true at all. It's a game of rhythm, right? Of hitting is a game of rhythm. And I don't know how you correct it because I don't like the 1-game wild card. I think the 3-game is better, even though we never get a 3rd game. 1 out of 8 series have gone to a 3rd game. I think this format is better. I really do.
Would you like
baseball
7
did a
in the
lot of right
divisional?
things, Kenny. A lot of things right, and I criticized Manfred. They need to get rid of the ghost run. The ghost runner is ridiculous. I also think they need to get rid of the 3-batter minimum. They did that to speed up the game when there was no pitch clock. I don't particularly like it. I think it limits the managers in managing their bullpens in the late innings. So I would get rid of those 2 rules.
Yeah, I like the ghost runner just because I live in the central time zone, and when games are going. Late. Anyways, all right, let's get to football. So last night, of course, Thursday night football, Chiefs and the Broncos. By the way, what has happened to that once proud Denver Broncos franchise?
Sad, isn't it?
It's as a Broncos fan. Look, I've been on the radio for all 3 of their Super Bowl wins, so I'll always have those. And there were a lot of bad Sundays prior to that. But boy, oh boy, since they won in Santa Clara, is that where it is? Levi State. And anyways, I was there, Super Bowl 50. They've just been putrid. This team has been awful. And there's no sign of coming out of this because you are in cap purgatory if you decide to jettison Russell Wilson.
That Russell Wilson deal may go down with a Herschel Walker deal for Minnesota.
Might be worse.
It might be worse, Kenny.
Yeah.
Does Canada... So it divides. Is most of Winnipeg Denver fans, or are there Minneapolis Vikings fans? I know as you get west, it would be Seahawks.
Right. No, it's Vikings. So the reason I became a Bronco fan as a kid is I would either get home from the track from Sunday afternoon racing, or in the winter I'd be at the rink. And the late game, the Broncos seemingly were on when I was, in my influential sports fandom era of my life. So that's how I became a Bronco fan. And they were pretty good with Orange Crush, et cetera, et cetera. But, and the spread. So anyways, the game last night, you guys closed at 10.5.
Yeah.
It lands on 11. Was that a good result or a bad result?
It was kind of a neutral result. It was the total. We took under action there. And it made sense, right? A little bit of win and a little bit of familiarity of division foes. And hey, look, Kansas City has not been explosive offensively.
Nope.
You thought Denver would try to run the ball, and they did so pretty effectively, actually. I can't believe how bad Wilson is. I mean, I'm watching these plays and wondering, what is he looking at? What is he thinking? How good of a job did Pete Carroll do in Seattle? Not that Pete Carroll's a quarterback guru, but of protecting this guy from everybody on the team that hated him. Right? Because
that's true too.
Well, it's amazing. Yes. It's amazing. There, they lined up as soon as he left to talk about him. Here, his offensive linemen don't care for him. he's got problems, but I think Carroll did a great job protecting him from himself and shielding him from the rest of the teams when they had some, men on those teams, right? I mean, those were some, I it's amazing to me. I don't know where they go. I mean, this has got to be a 4 or 5 year rebuild for this team. And if they dump them, I don't know where you're going with them. I don't know what you're accomplishing with them. There's no shot you're going to make the playoffs.
Nope.
I don't think there's any shot he gets better either.
Nope.
And
I don't think
Peyton
so.
as a coach has been a bust. I don't particularly think his
gave
play
up
call.
a first.
Why were they calling the timeout at the end of the half? I think everything stinks.
It does. And they gave up a first and a second for Sean Payton, for crying out loud. A coach. I mean, this George Patton guy brought in Randy Gregory, bust, he's gone. Frank Clark, he's a bust.
They're going to release him too. They're going to release Clark, yeah.
Threw all that money at Russell Wilson. Anyways, I have an opinion on. I like a game on Sunday for the first. I really like a game on Sunday.
Okay.
And it's the Niners and Cleveland. And I love Cleveland in this spot, despite the fact that Sean Watson's not starting. I mean, Dallas and San Francisco, they had to be sky high for that game. They're going across the country. Cleveland's got a pretty good defense, Mike. You know that. You like these Browns, that Brown defense. And I'm getting 10. I don't know anything about P.J. Walker. I think you're going to turn around, hand the ball off. If Cleveland can score 14, I think that's going to be enough because I think San Francisco want to get back on the plane.
I made the same comment on the show this morning. I said if Cleveland can get to 14 or 17, you should be okay here. I teased it when it was 7.5 down with San Francisco because if he didn't practice on Wednesday off a bye, he was never going to play. But they waited for the announcement. But I thought you knew he wasn't going to play, right?
Right. Yeah.
So I thought I got some value there. I think they lost a lot of confidence in the young man from Las Vegas in that performance against Baltimore, DTR.
Yeah.
Walker stepped in and won some games as a backup, but they have to run the ball.
Yes.
Dallas didn't even try to run the ball there. You've got to try to run the football. And I said it's strange because all this money's coming in on San Francisco. When you look at everything, this is supposed to be the week to fade them, right?
Yeah,
for the reason of Sunday night, high travel, early game. That's all the reasons to be on the other side. So we'll see how good. Here's a stat that Femi gave me that I didn't know. What do you think Kyle Shanahan's record is as a head coach or offensive coordinator going against Jim Schwartz as a head coach or defensive coordinator? This is
I know you love Schwartz. So somebody's probably feeding you that one. It can't be very good.
Shanahan's 1-8 against Schwartz. So that's amazing to me. I didn't know that before he told me that. So I have to go back and look at where those matchups were. But anyhow, I teased San Francisco down, so I would never lay 10 on the road in that spot. I mean, there's just better spots. So we'll see how good the Cleveland defense is.
Yep.
Right. I think, they're going to want to keep Purdy out of trouble. So it's going to be quick routes and run the ball. And then Cleveland's going to have to run the ball. So I think, Cleveland wants to keep this game in the teens. That's obviously going to be the strategy. So
sure,
we'll see, but it certainly will be interesting. I think it's a real good benchmark for how good is the Cleveland defense because admittedly, DTR never kept the offense on the field. So that defense just wore out against Baltimore. Baltimore pounds you and they just had no shot. There was no compliment from the offense at all. Yeah. So I feel that's kind of unfair to label it and say, oh, Baltimore made their defense look bad. Well, they can't go on the field for 38 minutes and play defense,
Well, with that stat that you just laid on me, Schwartz versus Kyle Shanahan, that makes me feel better about the fact that that I took 10. Sunday night's usually such a big spot, right? It's you're going to write a ton of ticket. The Giants and the Bills, that's Sunday night football.
What horrific standalone games we've had. And I think in general, the level of the product hasn't been great this year.
Yeah.
There's so many mediocre to bad teams. It's just you don't get a lot of good games. Right. And you don't rarely get teams stringing 2 wins together. They win, they lose, they win, they lose. It's a terrible game. I don't know should the line move because it's Tyrod Taylor instead of Daniel Jones?
Maybe
I worry about Taylor staying healthy for the whole game. I mean, that's got to be the concern, right?
Sure.
But
speaking of staying healthy as a quarterback, do you guys believe that Joe Burrow is 100%?
I think he's whatever he was before, whether it was 40%, he's probably halfway to 100.
Okay.
But I don't think he's 100. No, not at all.
Seattle's a very tough team.
Yep.
Cincinnati really needs this one. Do you have an opinion on that game?
Yeah, I don't. I'm torn on Seattle because I watched the Rams just annihilate him in week 1. They look good against the Giants, but the Giants are bad. They always play those same games against Detroit where both teams score 40 and 30 some points, right? Mm-hmm. I'm still waiting on this Seattle to how good their defense is. I'm not sure yet. It's a tough spot for Cincinnati, though. Another week on the road and stay out west and all that,
Yeah. College game. We were talking with Tom Kakert in the second hour of our show from Hawkeye Report. He threw out a prop, and Trent got right on his phone and texted Jeff Benson because we all forgot that we can't, include student athletes in any props here in the state of Iowa. But what he came up with, total points, Iowa, Wisconsin versus Caitlin Clark, who's playing at Kinnick Stadium outdoors against, is it DePaul, I want to say, on Sunday. So Caitlin Clark versus total points, Wisconsin, Iowa. And sadly, can't do it.
They have an exhibition game there?
Yes. I can't.
Outdoors in the wind.
51,000 tickets have been sold, Mike. Sold. Not given away. Sold.
Is that the capacity of Kinnick? What's Kinnick's capacity?
Kinnick's at 68, 69, I think, down from 70.
How about the women's volleyball? They got the 92,000 at Nebraska.
In Lincoln at Memorial Stadium. That gets your attention.
How about that?
Yeah.
That's an interesting prop. Or you could put Iowa points against Clark assists. I mean, that's I don't know. How does Iowa get to 10? I don't know. How they beat Purdue with the stat line that quarterback had. I mean, it's amazing. But they have to play so perfect and everything else. They got to, it's just. And now you go. How Camp Randall is. Even when you take really talented teams there, that's a tough environment. But if somehow Iowa wins, they're in decent shape.
Driver's seat.
Yeah, right?
Driver's seat.
They really are. If somehow they could win this game, it's amazing.
Minnesota, they get them at Kinnick next week. Minnesota's awful.
And they're bad. They're much worse. Illinois is bad. Nebraska will be better. They keep getting better. They keep getting better with Rule.
That game's in Lincoln.
Yeah, I know. So that's, to me, and that might have some role at the end if they could beat Wisconsin. Probably right now is the best team in the West, and they get Iowa there. So I don't have high hopes for Iowa. I think Iowa State can win this game. I'm always critical of Campbell. I think this team, I was very impressed, and I had him on the money line Saturday night.
Good.
I thought the defense did a terrific. This is a good defensive team.
Yeah.
They really are.
And they're running the ball better.
Yeah, they're running, and they were opening up holes finally. Remember in them first games, they couldn't even get out of the backfield. They were losing yardage on all the running plays. So
right.
I think they got a decent shot in Cincinnati. I love that game under 40. I got it at 44.5. It's already down to 42.5. I like it. I like it under a lot.
Let me ask you about your alma mater, Notre Dame USC on Saturday night. Any
I'm not
opinion?
sure they shouldn't even be favored.
Mm-hmm.
Who deserves the blame? The AD is it terribly scheduled this. Go to Ireland, play every single week, and get 4. You knew this was going to be 4 ranked teams in a row. I mean, just brutal. They finally ran out of gas. I mean, it's just awful. USC's defense is not very good, but I can't lay any points in this game. I don't know. It wouldn't shock me if USC came in there and put up 35 or 38. And it's a shame because Notre Dame got a really good offensive line and defensive line. They just ran out of gas. 5 turnovers in a close game in Louisville in a charged environment for their fans. With every week they play an undefeated team every single week. So it's tough. I'm staying away from the game. I really am.
Game of the year, certainly of the day, is 12:30 Pacific, 2:30 our time.
Yeah.
In Seattle, Washington, Oregon. I like Washington. I'm a Penix guy. He gets 2 receivers back, which he needs more weapons. Your thoughts on that game?
That's really tough. I'm tempted to take 3, just because I think there's very little that separates them.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think, I still think the balance of Oregon is important. Oregon wants to run the ball. They have more of an SEC mentality. Penix is really talented. I mean, they're really, really talented. But defense is not terrific. I think it'll be a great game. I like the under a little bit there too. Neither of these teams are in the top 50 in pace. Neither of them rush to the line, but their offenses are really efficient. They score on most, drives. So should be a terrific game there. What a beautiful setting that is in Seattle with the boats there. I mean, I went to one game there years ago.
Oh, did you?
At Washington. It was an early season game. It's breathtaking. That might be the most beautiful stadium in the country, football stadium in the country.
Interesting. I still like Folsom Field in Boulder is pretty unique as well. But yeah, I've never been to the one to the stadium in Seattle. And compare and contrast that, right? 2:30, you've got Oregon, Washington going up and down the field, and on Fox there's Wisconsin and Iowa slogging it out.
Is that a 3 o'clock kick?
3 o'clock our time, yeah.
Fox spreads them out with the 4 hour, which is good. It spreads them out with the 4 hour.
I agree with you. Hey, one more just popped into my head. So Trent and I do our picks against. We do our little contest. I hate the college slate of games this week. As far as betting them, I laid 32 and took Michigan just because they're so. But would you ever lay that many points?
I don't think Indiana might score. They might not score.
I'm with you.
And since Harbaugh's come back, now they're covering numbers and running up the score, right? What the assistant coach just put the brakes on in the second half of those games. And, they shut everybody out, but they didn't even get to the what they were laying. To me, and everybody says there's no one. I think, to me, they're clearly the best team in the country.
Agree. They are the best team.
Now, Georgia did finally play a full game against Kentucky and looked good, but I can't forget, South Carolina was up 10 in the first half in Athens, and I just think Michigan is loaded. This is his best team. I think they'll beat Ohio State again. I think they'll be in the national championship game, whether it's Georgia again going for 3 or whatever. Yeah. I think they're really, really good.
Hopefully it's against Washington because I got them at 32-1 and I can hedge.
How about this? I bet North Carolina. I laid 3 with North. What kind of mental state can Miami be in going there after that idiot Cristobal? How can you do that? That's the worst mistake you could ever make.
It wasn't the first time he's done it.
No.
He did it at Oregon, apparently, which is just unbelievable.
That's a very bad comparison, that Stanford game. That Stanford game, they were facing 2nd and 2, and Stanford had a timeout. If they didn't make a first down, they'd have had a punt with about 30 seconds left. I don't agree because you're supposed to run the ball there and get a first down. They fumbled. Yeah. What was worse was the Rose Bowl in 2020 against Wisconsin, where he had 3rd and 3 with 1:10 left. Wisconsin had no timeouts, up 1. You run the ball there. If you don't get it, you're punting to Wisconsin with 15 seconds left with no timeout. He threw a pass. They got the first down, so nobody talks about it. But if the pass was incomplete, they'd have given Wisconsin a minute to get a field goal, which I thought was a horrible decision at the time. He still doesn't know how to explain it. He's talking about we could only run 127. Idiotic. Somebody said he's the new Anthony Lynn. Are you kidding me? Cristobal makes Anthony Lynn look like Bill Walsh. I mean, this guy's a moron.
Yeah, Anthony Lynn, Brandon Staley. Talk about that from bad to worse. Anyways, Mike, thanks for doing this as always. Circus Sports sponsors. Of course, you can download the app here in the state of Iowa. And if you happen to be watching in Illinois, I know a lot of people do, Circus Sports is available in Illinois. And you don't have to go to any casino to sign up. You just download the app, fund your account, and away you go. We'll see you next week, Mike Palm. Have a good week.
Thanks, Kenny.
And thank you for watching. Thank you to Aiden White behind the scenes. We'll see you next time on The Hook on Iowa Everywhere. Enjoy the football, everybody.